Hello, everyone. So, welcome to the monthly masterclass. This is the first one, so be kind and gentle on us. I see Amber's online, so we're going to call on our very special guest. Let me get that right. And that'll just take a moment. Yeah, and then how's everyone doing? A fantastic Thursday. Hello, Amber. Welcome.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good evening for those of
Yeah,
us elsewhere in the world. So Amber, thank you so much for coming on. We really do appreciate it. The monthly masterclass, I've got like a blurb. I've got notes. You'll be impressed, Amber.
all right, let's hear them.
Okay, so welcome to the Innerunner monthly masterclass, where we discuss the habits, routines, and strengths and the lives of those that have excelled and transcended their chosen field of endeavor, which is you. And where we experience the world through the eyes and the minds of the masters. So that's the theme. Um, just in case you want to know. Yeah, hello everyone. Okay. Um, so your Amber's very humble, and so we're going to kind of just figure up a little bit. So you're a two times world champion, right? And a six-time US pro cycling champion. And I don't think this has happened very often in either the men or women, but you've held the world champs and the US road and the US time trial championship jersey at the same time.
Yes, I don't
I don't,
know if that's ever happened before. That's
yeah,
actually, I've never really thought about it, but you might be right on that one.
yeah, I don't think there's very many people that have had that distinction.
Yeah, that was
Quite
special.
cool when you go to a race, like,
Yeah,
oh, which jersey to wear,
exactly.
right?
No, I mean, being the world champion and winning both US Pro titles at the same time was, I mean, it was a beyond a dream come true.
Yeah. And it happened after, many people, obviously you're talented, and talent has many different sort of forms and shapes, and we'll discuss that a little bit. But many people think that the road to excellence is often easy, and you just didn't have an easy go of it, did you? So you kind of started out and you nearly died when you were very young. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was 4 years old and I had spinal meningitis. At the time, I was in a coma for 3 days, and the doctors told my parents that I was going to die. A couple days later, they said, "Well, if she lives, she's going to be brain damaged and deaf." And thankfully, God had other plans, and yeah, I'm here and still thriving.
Not too brain damaged.
No, no, thankfully not. And who knows about my hearing? I think my husband might think otherwise, but no, all good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, you also got a master's degree in biology and nearly went on to do a PhD, right?
Yeah, I was in the molecular biology, genetics, and biochemistry doctorate program at UC Irvine for 2 years, at which point I decided to go chase bike racing. So I took a master's degree and left the doctorate behind and never looked back.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, we'll get to your sort of history on athletic as well, but also then you also had a big setback. You had melanoma, right?
Yeah, so melanoma in 2007, and it was on my back. Thankfully, we caught it early, and it was only stage one, but it still required a pretty significant operation and a big cut back along my
Hmm.
spine.
Yeah, I've seen that. And what is the comeback like from that?
Yeah, that actually wasn't too bad compared to all the other ones. To be honest, all the other trauma center visits and the shattered bones and plates and screws, and as we'll probably talk about, the Tour California crash and the shattered hip. So, yeah, that was really quite simple from that perspective, in that it was no bones had to heal. I just had to really take care of the wound itself.
Yeah.
And then, of course, obviously, cancer is cancer. So, I still see my cancer doctor twice a year. I see a skin doctor who checks my skin twice a year. So I'm very vigilant in keeping track of anything that might be cropping up.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for anyone that does outdoor and endurance sports is get your skin checked
Hmm.
twice a year for sure. Stay on top of that. Okay, well, as soon as you brought it up, we'll talk about the crash. What happened?
So, yeah, in 2013, I was racing the Tour California Time Trial, and it was a race course that I had essentially, I had practiced it in my mind hundreds of times. I thought I had it memorized. I thought I was dialed with regards to the course itself. Race day, I was racing extremely well. In fact, I had sensations in my body similar to
Hmm.
how I felt at the 2008 World Championships, and I was rolling. I was going good. I think I was on my way to victory. And that course that I thought I had memorized, I didn't. And I came around a, a bend, one of the on the descent. There were a series of corners, and I thought I was at the last corner, assuming I was gonna exit onto a straight road. And so I came around a bend, full speed, expecting a straight line, and there was one more right turn chicane, and I just, I couldn't scrub speed. I couldn't save it. And I managed to kind of turn my body enough where it was only my hip that went into the wall. But I schmacked it pretty hard and left my iliac crest completely shattered. When I hit the ground, my head bounced on the pavement, and I kind of broke my nose and probably broke a couple ribs. So it was pretty scary at the time. I just remember laying on the pavement, and I could feel bleeding, and I didn't know if that was internal or external. And the strange thing is I think I was the calmest one at the scene. I had people just like scrambling to pull me out of the road. Of course, I was in the race course, and I understood that, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I mean, I had just had a serious accident, and I didn't want to move until I knew it was okay, or at least until there was a doctor there. So if I did
Yeah.
move, and I went, he was there to bring me back to life. But anyway, yeah, it was a very very scary incident. But definitely, I wouldn't say it was a career defining moment, but definitely a career dividing moment.
Yeah. It was kind of Amber before and after, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
And that
so,
was that was age. How old was I at that time? Just to give you some perspective. 2013, I would have been, do the math, 38.
yeah. Well, people are doing the math and figuring out how old you are now.
I know, 45. I'll save you the trouble. I own it.
So, because this is a masterclass, I think we need to just touch on a few points there. Is that, a common theme of masters is that visualization and mental preparation and rehearsing and playing out the scenarios again and again in your mind, which we'll kind of touch on a little bit later, but I just like to point that out at this stage. So, interestingly enough, I met you after that crash,
Yes.
and I like cool stories. So, the first time I saw you, I went to the London Olympics. I got off the plane. We went straight from whatever the Heathrow to the station, and we sort of dumped our bags. And someone was saying, "I'm going to go and watch the women's time trial event." So I just dumped my bags, turned around, grabbed a water, went down the stairs, hopped on the tram, jumped out, got onto the course.
Yeah.
And I think the third rider I saw come past was you.
No way. You never told me that.
I think I
Oh,
have.
that's
So
cool.
at this point, I'm going to point out that Amber's probably the person I've treated the most ever. So I've been working with you for, what is it, 6 years now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sort of basically weekly, once a week, unless you're traveling or I'm traveling. But anyway, we did meet at Roush on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
You were trying to sell a bike, and we just
I
got
was.
struck up a conversation.
I know.
Do you remember that
I
conversation?
do. And I remember thinking, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. I had been through, as an athlete, as a broken athlete, as a distance runner and broken, constantly broken. And so my high school and collegiate career as a runner spent a lot of time in training rooms and with PTs and doctors who they didn't ever seem to really be able to truly understand. So, when I sat and talked to you, it wasn't like you were the first, expert that I had spoken to. It was a really special connection right away, and I could tell you understood athletes and you understood the body in a different way than I'd ever heard anyone talk about it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, from, there's always two sides to a story, or three sides, well, there's lots of sides to a story. But I do remember at that stage, you were in chronic pain. when you've decided to come and see me, I do remember that you said, I know I'll never ride my bike like I used to. I just don't want to ride in pain anymore. And that was like 2 years after your crash, right?
Yeah, probably. Maybe it was less. It may have been because,
18 months. I saw you in
yeah.
2014.
Okay, so it would have been early, so early 2014. So maybe a
Hmm.
little less than a year after the crash.
Okay, yeah. And it wasn't just the crash and the pain when you're riding your bike. You also had GI, just you had but quite a few almost like nervous system complaints going
Mm-hmm.
on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a mess, a tangled, woven mess.
And then 3 months later, we were treating you, and you said to me, yeah, but Lawrence, I want to go fast. And I said, no, 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 hang on, that's not the deal. You said, I don't want to ride my bike in pain anymore, and you're not riding in pain. What's this go faster story we talking about? Which is a common theme, right? Like, we
Yeah.
just want more.
Yeah, I also think it's what's wired into me. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like if I decided I was going to come back, I'd won a world championship and been an Olympian. I didn't want to just come back. I wanted to come back and win and be fast again.
and how do you feel now? I mean, so now you're 45, and what kind of shape are you in now? And I
Yeah,
don't
I'm in
know.
I'm in fantastic shape, courtesy of the two core people on my team, you and my coach, Tim Cusick. And between you helping me learn how to take care of my body, I've learned so much in how to take care of my body, how to stay healthy, how to listen to the whispers. I just, I'm at a different place. My body is healthier, stronger, more functional than it's ever been. And so as a result, it's able to absorb work, and I'm able to do more work now than I've ever done. Like I do training loads and I've done training camps that are incredible. I think at age 45, people would probably doubt that that would be possible. But certainly, you've helped me put my body back together and get it working in a way that is truly special. And not only staying healthy, but also the functionality of using my glutes and using my posterior chain and just being strong, in addition to being healthy.
Resilient as well, like
Resilient,
absorb.
very
And then
resilient. Yeah, that's super important, actually.
yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit later as well. And also, we talk about flying too close to the sun, which is kind of, if you want to be a world champion, you've got to fly pretty close to the sun, right? So thank you for those kind words. Cool. And so we go back. You were talented at school. You were a runner, right? And a soccer player.
Yeah, a runner and a soccer player. In fact, I was a soccer player before I was a runner. I got into distance running, cross country running in high school. I ran a mile in PE class, and the PE teacher was actually the cross country coach. And he did not leave me alone until I came out for the cross country team. And thankfully, he got me. And that first year of running track and field, I actually, to be honest with you, I played softball my first as a freshman, and then it was the next year that I got into track and field. It finally bit me. The running bug bit me, and I just, like, without ever training, I ran a 5 minute mile basically. I mean, I had started running track and field, but not like years of running, in a 10:38 2 mile. So it was just like, wow, I have a gift, and a special ability, and was all in with running. Went to Nebraska, University of Nebraska on a scholarship and ran there. But basically, after that first year of running that was super special, I dealt with stress fractures over and over again for about 4 years until I surrendered the running, and moved into the cycling. So I was I look back at that time, and for me now as a champion, I can see, I wouldn't change what I went through, as hard as it was, as young as I was, and as important as running was to me. I wouldn't change what I went through. I definitely don't want to go through it again, or wouldn't want to go through it again. But I can look back now and see how God used that time to develop the key characteristic of perseverance in me, and just some faith elements, and really some of the championship intangibles that I have now that I've exercised on the bike, really were laid down during those early years of struggling, to be honest.
Calm seas don't make a good sailor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And there's never growth without discomfort.
Yeah. And if you look back on those stress fractures, how do you see them? I mean, I imagine you'd look back with a different perspective. What do you
Yeah,
think was at the root of those? Do you think it was diet or mechanical or breathing or
that's having known you now. I think I think that at the root of it probably was some diet. I was the most picky eater ever, and so like the content of my diet wasn't great, nor was the quantity.
mm,
I just I I I didn't eat a lot, but it wasn't a disordered eating thing. It was just like I don't know. I just was so active all the time. So like the diet wasn't great to begin with, but then I'm gonna guess functionally and mechanically, and just the tension in my body. I mean, I was a kamikaze kid, so I crashed skateboards and bikes and jumped out of trees and did crazy stuff that I'm sure left a mark on my soft tissue and on my body and how it worked. So, yeah, then add that all together, and we've been running on pavement in Southern California, and I think it was the perfect storm.
yeah? And so the Ironman athletes want to know, are you going to do, and the triathletes want to know, are you going to do an Ironman one
Yeah,
day?
I would actually, I haven't, maybe I've told you, you have to help me be able to run first. I would
No problem.
love to be able to do an Ironman. I think about that when I'm out there on my 5, 6 hour rides, and especially when I go out on my TT bike for 100, 120 miles and just cruising. And I think, man, if I could run, maybe. I mean, I have so
We
much
know you can run.
yeah, I have so much respect for athletes in other sports. I would never make any assumptions.
Mm.
But yeah, I would be willing to try.
We'd have to teach you how to swim.
Yeah. What's funny is, yes, you would need to teach me how to open water swim with all
Mm.
my stress fractures. So, what could I do? I could swim, right? I couldn't do anything but swim and actually pedal a bike. So, that was the other thing that was happening while I was going through all the rehabilitation was I was developing a really good spin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Um, let's talk about diet now. So I remember, like on the couch when I first met you, we were talking about diet, and you were frustrated because I think you had like some digestive issues or a bit of a sensitive stomach, which is kind of common. Like if you have inflammation and pain in your body somewhere, you kind of have inflammation elsewhere. There's obviously a link between your autonomic nervous system and your gastrointestinal tract, which I think is vastly understated. We were kind of talking the other day about people trying to hack their parasympathetic system down, like splash cold water in their face because that activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Whereas the reality is you got to basically live calm, or you've got to have a grounded parasympathetic nervous system. Really, you can't just, it's not a little switch that you can kind of flick on with a splash of cold water. So how's your diet differed now? And because now, I mean, I don't know, I'll let you express it, but one is I think I can share this. You're pretty open and transparent. Is like you're very, very healthy. You have a very regular menstrual cycle. You're not Amber's not trained to the, you train close to the sun, but it's in a very healthy, positive way. So there's not an eating disorder. There's not skipping menstrual cycles. Your diet's pretty proactive. Like it's a strong, robust, sustainable space that you operate from first, correct?
Yeah, and that makes me think back to when I was in high school with the stress fractures. I stopped having a menstrual cycle, so that was really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I think it's one of the benefits of it's one of the tough things about being a woman, but it's also one of the benefits is we have some biofeedback with regards to our menstrual cycle. So when that's normal and regular, it's actually a really good sign that the body's operating very well. Yeah, so like eating is not a problem for me. I've found that from a recovery standpoint, from a performance standpoint, from just staying healthy, eating is so important. So I don't like to worry too much about being too fine tuned on getting exact numbers because I think the consequences are too great.
Yeah.
Having been on the other side of that, yeah. Sorry, and your question was with regards to
Yeah, well, I know. I'll ask leading questions. Like, I know you kind of have linked your eating and what you eat to your metabolism and
yeah,
the energy systems when you're training. You
right.
start incorporating bone broth for recovery. Just sort of flesh out a few interesting
Yeah,
things. So
okay.
you kind of like plant-based, but you also like use bone broth, and you have different. you understand the energy requirements for different kinds of intensities, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the things that happened to me was as I've aged, I think my metabolism and how it uses energy is a little bit different than when I was younger. I was probably a little bit
Hmm.
more robust. And at the time, too, when I grew up and started competing, that was the age of, everything carbohydrate and zero fat, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I did a lot of that. And I think that really messed me up um, as far as the insulin side of things and the being able to use sugar. But at the same time, I'm at the point now where it's like, I fully understand how important the right balance of macronutrients are. They're all important.
Yeah.
You have to have fat, you have to have carbohydrate, you have to have protein, and you don't want to skimp on any of them, to be honest. And really, it's a spectrum, and it's a sort of a scale that shifts depending on the style of work or type of work you're doing. The more intense work you're doing, the more carbohydrate I need to eat just to fuel my performance. It's a quicker energy, and I'll need that to be able to hit the real high peak powers. At the same time, too much of that can send me off a cliff with regards to how I'm feeling, how my body responds to things. So it's a real fine line. And I think figuring out that right blend and level is really important. Yeah, I think learning to listen to your body and the cues that you
Yeah.
get from what you're eating is really important. I know there's a lot of things that I'm super sensitive to or intolerant to, not allergic, but just that
Mhm.
cause my body to react differently. And typically I'll see that in like a skin response. My skin might break out or my bowel movements change. It's just like something different happens with my gut. And certainly the nervous system is a really important part of digestion too. And so, like Lawrence was talking about, the parasympathetic and that calming lifestyle, I know that rest and digest, is so important. And there's a reason why we need to be in that space because digestion is so important to obviously absorbing the nutrition and the nutrients, but also fueling the performances and recovering and everything. So. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Nutrition is always a sketchy thing to touch on in with a
I
broad
know.
topic because people tend to run with it.
Yeah.
But it's really important, and yeah, I eat a lot of vegetables. My basically the way I think about it is I try to think about different colors, and I try to get 3 to 5 different colors every day, and at least 5 servings every day. And a lot of times it's more than that, but that's kind of where I started. And then I do eat I do eat a lot of red meat, to be honest. For me, there's something in that helps my body. So that's the other thing is like finding a protein source for you that
Yeah.
works is really important because
Well, I think it's that individualization that's really important that people kind of miss out. You can't copy other people. I have the example of this client that I don't know did a genetic test and said, I can't eat chicken. And I'm like, you're 54 and you figured out that chicken doesn't agree with you. You know, there's a problem here. With age is supposed to come wisdom. You're supposed to start figuring out what agrees with you and what doesn't agree with you, and then sort of hold on to those things. So thank you for sort of sharing that. Um, I had leading on from that. Okay, let's talk about grounding. So
okay.
um, I know Amber really well, people, so I'm trying not to ask her too leading questions. I'm trying to get it really from Amber's perspective, or I could just sort of railroad you through this conversation. You walk a lot. How much do you walk? What do you do with your walking? What do you feel about your walking?
Walking, a lot of times people say cyclists shouldn't walk, and I am absolutely the opposite. I love to walk. Multiple reasons. It's my way to calm down. So like in walking, I can nose breathe. I can be really calm and relaxed. I can put on some worship music and just really just um, just tune out the world and just kind of just let my parasympathetic kick back on. And I will walk on my rest days. So and it's not a power walk, it's a gentle, easy walk where I'm thinking about lowering my cortisol, just recovering, just being in this space of real gentle movement. It's awesome for my hips and my lower body and just bringing back a fluidity and a casual movement and motion to what I'm doing. When I have time, I love to drive down to the beach and do a barefoot walk in the sand. That is the grounding element. And that is just like, there's something so special about just my feet in the sand, in the water, breathing in the fresh air that is just like a supercharged recovery day. And so whether I do that on, my rest days, occasionally like I'll have to do intervals that require me to drive somewhere. And so I might drive down and park at a beach parking lot, do my intervals, my big ride, finish my ride, pack my bike up, go out to the beach, and spend 30 minutes walking on the beach barefoot as like the best recovery ever, doing both the grounding and getting my parasympathetic shifted back on.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And I work with triathletes, and I tell them when you get off that bike, you need to down regulate.
Yeah.
From my
Yeah.
perspective, it's more important than your carbohydrates or your Normatec boots or whatever you're doing is
Yeah.
get that nervous system to calm straight back down. Because
Yeah.
this as soon as you do, you obviously kick yourself back into recovery.
I would say the sensations of that too, because these
Mm,
people watching might be curious. Like when you do a really, really hard workout, there's something that you feel just resonating in you. You finish it, you take your shower, and you're like, whoa, man, you can just feel the workout resonating in you. To get that out of you, just go for a walk around the block and just think about just really deep, slow breathing, moving really easy, and see if after 15 to 20 minutes, that just kind of leaves you and you're flooded
yeah.
with a little bit more calmer space.
Yeah, you got to get that wired sensation out of you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's cycling because just if you think about it from this way, you could never run as much as you bike,
No.
and so the hours I think spent on a bike of training and conditioning does something to the body that we need to respect and realize it's a massive stress. Or you might still feel fine, maybe your legs aren't that sore, but 5 hours on a bike, most people can't run 5 hours, or they can, but not very often. So you do need to, obviously you figured it out in your way. I really agree with your way, but you do need to down regulate after that. So let's talk about movement. You're talking about movement and fluid, and I'll share a little story. We went to the track once,
Mm.
and you were going around the track with Jim Manton from Aerosport, right? Minton.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I suddenly have a blank about his surname? It's Manton, right?
Manton, yeah.
Manton, okay.
Yeah.
And Tim, and you're going around the coach, and I'll tell it from my perspective. So Tim said you looked dialed. Jim said you looked dialed. I said you looked locked. Okay. And suddenly Jim said your aero numbers weren't that good. And you weren't, because you were pedaling at a constant set of watts round and round the track in your aero position and in your aero suit, right? And they said, oh, your wind resistance numbers weren't great. And we got you off the bike. And then we relaxed your thoracic spine and kind of opened up your back, let's say. And you got back on the bike, and then you sort of, I'm showing with my hands, you kind of locked and compressed in your thoracic spine, and that kind of opened up, and we kind of started to see an organic ISO, an organic amber going down. And for the exact same power, you were, and there's probably the exact same shape because you're very good at your shape, you probably went about a mile an hour quicker. Can you explain to me? Because there's the leading question. I know how you describe it. What do you describe? What is it that, because for me, you can make yourself fluid in the air and basically go faster for the same effort and same watts and same heart rate.
Yeah, so you would have seen the numbers, whereas I was just writing, so I wouldn't have known exactly all that. But yeah, I think what was happening was I was relaxing into the power and then moving. The way I describe it is kind of moving like a shark through the water, just real
Yeah,
real fluid and in a rhythm, and not fighting my body's natural rhythm, but just letting the back and forth connections within the shoulders, lower back to the posterior chain, all just, fire and happen real naturally. And it's a real fluid movement. It's not like some people, when they think aero, they think you have to be super steady still. And that might be for you, but for me, it was like as I moved more fluidly, like a shark, just kind of flowing through the water, all of a sudden I got really fast.
yeah. So that's a good. If you want to try and understand this concept, I try and liken it. If you go to a swimming pool and you make your body stiff and hard, and push off the wall, you'll die in the water. You'll stop quickly in the water. Whereas if a really good swimmer softens and matches their skin to the fluidity of the water, and a really good swimmer will be able to push off and basically glide underwater the length of the pool.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting that you can soften your body and your movement and, like you say, swim through the air and actually find speed for the same heart rate and the same power, which I think is, this is masterclassing, and that's masterclassing. Okay. And also, I think, like, again, a bit of a leading question. We've talked about this before. Let's talk about not such a happy experience where, do you remember when you went on a training camp in the cold and your and your seat height was possibly a little bit low, if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
and you came back and you gave me gray hairs. Talk us through that one. Trying to age me.
Oh, yeah, I do a good job giving people around me gray hairs. Thankfully, they love me still. Yeah, so I was scouting out the World Championship course in Norway, and I'd flown across, landed, basically built my bike up, and gone out in pouring rain, and it was freezing cold. And I had one chance to see the course, so it wasn't like I could wait. So I had to get out and do it. And yeah, my seat height was probably an inch to 2.5 centimeters too low. And you would think I would know that, but when you sit on an airplane for 18 hours, sometimes you don't know what's what. You don't know which way is up. And so like I did this workout and tried to do these hard efforts in this really terrible position. Um, then I went on to do some racing with my team where I was on and off that same bike, and I didn't put two and two together. Anyway, came back, and yeah, my body was not happy having sat too low, and just the the firing pattern of the muscles was wrong, the timing was wrong, and so then I was engaging muscles that I wouldn't normally engage at power I wouldn't normally use them, and it was an ugly mess, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on. But thankfully, I had Lawrence.
Yeah, well, we battled. It is interesting. We've discussed this before. Like people with the same physiology, and we don't expect your physiology to move much, right? So you know, if you're on training peaks and you've dialed in a threshold of 270 watts and you're training hard, we don't expect that number to move that much. It does slowly, hopefully, improve through your course, but it is weird. It's like if your rhythm and timing's off on cyclists, people can lose 20 watts, 25 watts, 30 watts.
Yeah,
And
that
for no, and you can get that rhythm and timing and fluidity back and suddenly find, and it almost like shifts your whole physiology curve, which is extraordinary because a lot of people just don't, your numbers are your numbers rather than there is this bigger element, there's this synergy, and you have this quantum step up of your numbers and step down of your numbers. And if you get denied, like trauma, like what you had, with that pain and suffering, we understand that if you have painful inhibition, you can get shut down from your true physiology. But it is interesting that you can lose your timing and your rhythm and not have access to your true potential.
Yeah, I think as a coach and having been through that, I can see it happen in my athletes sometimes. And so I'm cued in to actually ask those questions. Yeah, it's like they think everything's going wrong because all of a sudden they can't make power. And it's honestly not
Mm,
because they're not fit enough or strong enough. It's something has happened with their functional movement patterns. And it may be that their glutes have shut off or their hips have turned.
mhm.
And it's really getting them to pay attention to those things and reconnect. Whether it's the glute activation or have somebody take a look at their hips and
Yeah,
find out if they've been anteriorly rotated or something that's mechanically causing their body
yeah,
to move differently or be timed differently.
yeah. And I'm going to put in there that the source is always breathing. I think if you lose your breathing and your breathing gets restricted and tight, like just don't lose sight of that. If you're feeling like, oh, that resonates with me, just dysfunctional breathing is a dysfunctional movement pattern.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, thank you. Um, so, and let's talk about how much do you ride. We know you walk quite a lot, and you walk in your off season too, hours, like
Yeah,
a
so
lot of
my
hours a
a lot
week,
of
right?
hours actually. So when I finish my season, I shut down from being on the bike. I give up my cycling fitness. It's part of not being permafit and chasing
Mm,
peaks and big performances. You have to come down. You have to rest. You have to give up the chronic fatigue and really recover and regenerate. And so yeah, I walk, for a month, depending on how long my break is. It might be 4 weeks. It might be 8 weeks, but I just like to be outside and I like to be moving. So, I end up walking 30 to 45 miles a week probably. Yeah.
And when I first met you, like your feet, I mean, you're walking now in more minimal shoes, strengthened your feet, your
hmm
toes.
Yeah, that was huge. So you put me in a zero drop shoe. Um, and then also talked to me about giving my toes room to expand. And so I I didn't realize it, but my cycling shoes were clamping my toes together, and as I started to give my feet space to move properly and expand and be normal, yeah, that really helped bring my posterior chain back to life. It helped my hips settle down. It was like a core component of actually becoming really well.
Do you remember how much I worked on your feet when we were trying to
Yeah.
fix your
Okay.
pelvis?
So, yeah. So here's the story with Lawrence. Like, I'm coming off a shattered hip. I've had surgery for my melanoma. Like everything, I'm thinking upper body. My glutes aren't working. My legs aren't working. My first visit with Lawrence, all he did was work on my big toe. He worked on my right big toe. That was it. And I was like, dang, just my toe? How important is my toe? And it turns out it was the leading, it was this like I had to be unraveled in the right order. And Lawrence was able to pick up the fact that my big toe was causing problems. And crazy as it is, yeah, it was good. So then you spent a lot of time on my feet. And my feet, I just was on a barefoot beach walk with somebody, and she was admiring the space between my toes. She thought I was spreading them out. I'm all, no, that's just how they are.
And your shoe size grew, your cycling shoe
Yeah,
size grew as your feet
yeah.
relaxed out. Yeah,
hmm
cool. And then, there's on the other, well, I treat everyone like I want them to be able to run. So, this is the sneaky preparation for when you do Ironman. You'll have strong feet, good biomechanics, a good arch.
I'm gonna need a training partner, so I hope you're running.
No, no, no. I'll do open water swims with you, no problem.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of easy runs. I don't know about that riding. I can imagine. You don't, if we went for a ride, there wouldn't be a big slipstream behind you.
No, there isn't. So you would be working, but that's okay.
Okay, cool. Um, let's go. We've done that. Oh yeah, and then talking about sort of like physiology and stuff. You also had an interesting story with your sweat testing, and you know the guys from Precision Hydration and Andy. So tell us about when you sort of got yourself, I wouldn't say dehydrated, you got yourself into a sodium imbalance. Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a heavy sweater. I tend to lose a lot of fluid. I had been in Colorado racing at altitude, and I did no preparation to go to altitude to compete. And so it was just the first couple days were just so traumatic and hard. And then the racing was hard. And one of the days I had a really bad mechanical, and ended up chasing solo behind just to make the cut. And then the next day was pretty hot. So it was just I flew, and then I flew home immediately, and had a really weird episode overnight of feeling a little bit hyponatremic, and it was just this issue with the sodium. But yeah, the sweat testing has been huge for me because I am such a heavy sweater, and some of my biggest wins in competitions have been in really, really hot environments. So to know exactly the concentration of my sweat with regards to sodium has been just a key component to being able to hydrate properly, both on the bike and off the bike. And so then, yeah, obviously performance is impacted and improved, but also recovery,
Yeah.
and being able to stay well and not go through those bouts of just like the lightheadedness and the nauseousness and the funkiness that happens when you get out of balance with the sodium.
Yeah. So, I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. So the fact that you can sweat that much is great
hmm
for cooling and racing in hot conditions, but then you need to know what it's taking out of you and kind of get that dialed. And then, like again, just stressing that recovery. Everyone can train hard, but can you recover? And I'd like to, but this is like almost circle back to that movement. I hope you're starting to get that you're listening there. The masterclass of movement. What goes into that movement? Like it, I'd like to relate it back to sort of like playing guitar because I'm trying to learn how to play guitar, right? no one cares if you have strong fingers. No one cares how hard you can press the strings. No one cares how fast you can strum. It is, do you have rhythm? Do you have space? Do you have a pause? Is there fluidity? What is that thing that makes you listen to Eric Clapton on repeat versus, you need to stop what you're doing because you're causing me a headache, and movement is there's this quality to it. It's not just you can contract and relax a muscle. Now I've got a strong glute medius, and now I'm good to go. There is this whole deeper layer, isn't there?
Yeah, that's $1 million answer. I don't know. Yeah, I think experience. So much of being great and excellent at something, you cannot be afraid to fail. And so you're always pushing limits, but you also have to be willing to learn. So when you do things wrong, you come back and kind of take stock of maybe some of the cues your body was giving you. And then it's practicing and moving. And it's not a lot. It's not like I do hours and hours of mobility. I have
Mm.
some really basic core things that I do before I go out to ride, after I ride, on my rest days, and I incorporate it into my walking. So it's kind of a blend of more consistency, I think, than actually any one unique thing or amount of thing. Yeah, I don't. Did I cover what you were getting at?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just it is like I think it helps if you kind of paint a picture of what things look like when they're working well for people. Because from my perspective, I just don't see this narrative in high performance cycling and in high performance where people talk about the quality of movement as much. Remember, I was talking about with the power meters. Like after a while, I didn't really care what the numbers say. I'd love to have a biofeedback device that looked at you, that gave you like a green light when you were moving well. Like what's the quality of the power that
Yeah.
you're delivering rather
Okay.
than the number of the power that you're delivering.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So there are days when, for sure, like I might hit a number that's the gold number, but I get it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are days when I am just sitting on the power and it's very fluid and natural, and you're just like, wow, like I can make this power all day long, even though it's like VO2 max power, or whatever it might be. So definitely there is a quality to the movement that creates the power without as much energetic cost,
An
or
emotional cost.
emotional cost, or even just waste product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So if you there is a thought in cycling that cycling is just simply pain tolerance, and the more pain you can tolerate, the higher the like to get from 250 watts to 270 watts at threshold is simply learning to suck it up. Whereas there seems to me to be like when you have that no chain day or when you're in control and you're dishing it out, it hurts, but there's room above you and you're in control. Whereas it's not just getting to this limit and then just like I don't know, holding on to a pain component. Anyway, I don't want
Yeah.
to get too lost in that. Again, this is like the masterclass talk, so it is this looking for that kind of refining in the headspace.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to go through both.
Yeah,
But once you find it and you know what it feels like, then you know where the bar is and you know what you're trying to get after.
yeah,
And sometimes there's different levers that you're pulling on to get everything in fluid motion. There's the nervous system component, there's the cardio component, there's the strength component, there's the heart component. I mean, like heart in terms of this, like the spiritual energy inside you.
yeah,
That all have to come together. And sometimes, one is working and the others aren't. And you have to kind of fight through the process a little bit and move through the process and stay with the process. And things start to come together. My coach talks about making music and putting things in order. For me, it's like I talk to you often about just being tuned. It's like I know these components are in me, but I need to tune my instrument. I need
yeah,
to tune my body so that everything is working on the same page. All the strings are playing the right key, whatever
yeah,
it might
yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then when it is, and then you can play that music in a workout or in a race. It's just like, boom, there it is. It's such a special place to be.
yeah. Okay, thank you. And as well, we haven't mentioned a very, very important two people that are really important in your life. Well, it might be more than two. I'm going to get myself into trouble here. One is Jason.
Hmm.
Um, and so you have a very stable home environment. And I know a friend of mine, Julie Dibbins, says, the path to like a world title is kind of like you need. the heart of a tiger and a cunning plan. A lot of people say it takes a village, right? But you've got quite a small team, and definitely, Jason's a huge part of that.
Yeah,
And you like a
Jason.
small routine and a powerful base, because then I kind of like preempting this. From my side, you like to. It's easier if you have sort of a routine or a stable base and a stable setup and the support structure to then find that fluidity and flow, rather than if you're moving around or it's too complicated.
Yeah, and doing things at a master level is really hard. There's nothing easy about it, and so having a good support system around you and having people that can complement your weaknesses, and that you can just trust, who are there for you unconditionally. You can be raw, you can be real, you can talk to is super important.
Yeah, amazing. And then the other component that is a common theme of masterclass is a lot of people that have a sense of humility or sense of, which often comes from a sense of believing something greater than yourself. And I know religion, and you have a very personal relationship with God and a very spiritual person. How does that factor into your excellence in your masterclass?
Yeah, so my relationship with Jesus is super special. I'm for sure, I think he's writing a story with my life that only he can get credit for, to be honest, to be 45 and still trying to win a world championship and compete at the Olympic Games. But yeah, there is an element of peace and strength and joy that I'm anchored to. That doesn't change. Like that's immovable. It's unshakable. No matter what happens, no matter what the circumstance is, that does not change. And so I'm anchored to that. Um, there's also a source of power and purpose that comes. And so, like, one of the things I like to say is, I think everybody has been gifted with a special ability and a special passion. And where those things come together with opportunity, you're in your sweet spot. And for me, like, God's given me a special ability and a passion to do it. And he's given me opportunity, and I'm in my sweet spot. And it's such a joy and a privilege to be able to use that, and to be in my purpose and place of being able to honor him. So that there's power in having that purpose. There's invincibility in the sense of there's a lot of perseverance required to be great.
Yeah,
Regardless of what you believe, you have to be able to persevere. You have to get up and not give up and keep doing it over and over again. And for me, that invincibility, that power to persevere, has come from having a clear purpose, but also having a clear, source of power behind me.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, and for being sort of personal. And yeah, you do have to have that sort of humility. I think it's important that humans have a sense of humility. I think, hubris will get you into trouble, and the fact that you recognize that there's something greater than yourself is really important, whatever your religious domination is,
I mean, even
because people have different belief
on
structures.
a very low level, that ability to, I don't know if you'd call it an ability, but humility in general, that willingness to listen and the
Hmm.
willingness to learn and the willingness to grow, is very important. Otherwise, you're going to cap yourself.
Yeah. Anyway, thankfully you work with young athletes, which is amazing because we want role models and we want young athletes to. I would like to see young athletes.
Hmm.
I mean, I think we all know the dangers of high performance. We've seen so many people with like talent trained out of them, or
Yeah.
young talent just obliterated, and maybe that's their life journey too. But we do like to see sort of role models and guidance. And so, tell me, what is it like in 2016 after when I first met you? You clearly had come to terms with the fact that you would never ride your bike like you used to. You just didn't want to ride in pain anymore. What is it like to stand on that world champion podium? Because I love that picture of you. I think it's your profile picture now. There's just
Hmm.
a light shining from you and a light shining in you, and it's an amazing picture. It must be an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was. It was so special. It's so hard to put into words. But if you think about the journey to get there and the process that it took, the people involved, the people who didn't give up on me and kept believing. I mean, you were at Roush, so Kevin was still involved. You were very helpful. My coach, Tim Cusick, who had come alongside me and walked with me through this, my husband. Um, yeah, some people at home who had been praying for me. It was just like this journey, this incredible journey of perseverance and of I was 41 or 43, 43. No, 41. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, it was just like so special because I was at a different place in my life too. When you're younger, things are different. And so at this point, what it meant to win was different in the sense of, I was standing there in God's presence and he had given me this gift back again. And it was super special. So it was, yeah. To be honest, though, I would say, talking about the World Championship, and this is something I share with the young people that I do work with, is don't get don't lose sight of the process. People will forget the win and the victory. There's a lot of people who don't know I'm a world champion or have forgotten, those things. But the process is something that's going to stick with you forever. And that's the side of things that you have the chance to impact other people's lives too. And that goes on and sticks with them as well. So if I had to trade, like if I could have the victory but not the process, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because the people like you, like meeting you and the relationship with you and the conversations with you and with my coach Tim, like all the stuff that's gone on behind the scenes has been so much more valuable than actually winning. And I don't think you know that until you've won and you're like, wow, this isn't as valuable as people think it is. But these relationships behind the scenes and the impact and for me, what God's doing in my life, that is so much more valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes it more rewarding. You've kind of
Hmm.
earned it, and it puts it into perspective. I mean, because in 2016, you were second at no, did you win US time trial champs? No, you were
No,
second
I was
behind the cat
second.
lady. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you two, the first and second at US time trial champs didn't get to go to the Olympics in 2016.
correct. Yeah, that was so again, yeah, I mean I've dealt with being in
Setbacks.
position and I've dealt with setbacks in various forms, whether it's trauma centers or not selection, non-selections, yeah.
Yeah, so no, it was great to a great validation after being
Hmm.
left out of the Olympic team to stand and be the world champion. And that
Yeah.
was anyway, it was a special moment. I'll remember it. Cool. Okay, we can kind of talk on with more about more things. I think we've covered a lot of things. I think let's do some. We've got 4 questions, so let's do questions.
Hmm.
So if you look down at that ask a question button below these questions, please read the question
Okay.
and then
So,
answer it.
all right. So I'll just go in order.
Yeah.
How do I mentally recover from a crash? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think any sort of setback, there's a mental component to the recovery. Crashing, obviously, all of a sudden your brain connects what happens. Like there's consequences to you falling off your bike. And for me, those consequences were great. And so, yeah, there's been a big mental component to it. I tend to I think it's really important to go back to the fundamentals, go back to the basics. And get really confident at doing the basics and the fundamentals and work through those and don't chase speed but chase form.
Yeah.
Get the technique right and let the speed follow. And don't overcook yourself. Step into things. Obviously, you're going to have to press and push a little bit to challenge yourself and be a little bit uncomfortable, but don't go so extreme with the discomfort that it sets you backwards. And that's, again, going to be a personal thing as far as working through that process.
And Tim helped you with just to sort of step in it. You guys did work on basic, real simple bike handling skills and sort of grooving how to corner and grooving how to brake and sort of giving confidence in your skills, which kind of helps, right?
Yeah, definitely. I needed to be humble enough to ask for help, to be
Yeah.
honest, because you think somebody at my level, like that's a pretty basic thing, right? And it was like I had to be humble enough to ask for
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also from just interestingly enough, from a trauma point of view, is like as you learn new movement, you almost learn new neural pathways. So just always growth, fluidity, movement also helps you overcome and shed back those traumas and those injuries. Like if you're splintered and stuck in an area and you open up that area, you also open up the confidence in that area.
Yeah. I mean, for you, you showed me how to open my hips, and that is so important for cornering,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
until I could learn that and groove that movement pattern, cornering was difficult because I wasn't opening my hips in the corners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
tension somewhere is tension everywhere. Cool.
Yeah. You want me to keep going on the questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
What is your ultimate goal as an athlete? Do you envision competing for as long as you can, or is there a dream that keeps you going until you achieve it? Wow. Yeah, so I don't know. When people ask me this question, how long am I going to ride for? I don't know the answer to that. It's in God's hands. I'll let Him shut the door. But I am I'm focused right now on the World Championships and the Olympics. This year with COVID has been so crazy. To come out fully prepared, preparing well, doing all the little things and the little steps to get ready for trying to make the Olympic team and competing, and not just competing but doing well, and then the World Championships, and it's like everything's getting canceled. Worlds just got canceled yesterday. To be
Oh, really?
determined, yeah, to be
Yeah.
determined on if they're going to happen at a later date or at a different location. So there's this uncertainty right now, even with regards to that. But I'm so focused on trying still that I'll press forward through that through next year, to see what happens with Tokyo. It's still in me. I still have the passion, and I'm still putting out power on the bike, that is as good as I've ever put out. So I'm still gonna move forward. After next year, I'll reassess. Usually, it's a year to year. At this point, at my age, it's
Yeah.
kind of a year to year thing where I assess, spend some time in prayer, and just think through it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, you are, like, just to make it very clear, you are in basically lifetime best shape at the moment at 45.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've
And
obviously lost some of my peak sharp power, but the
yes,
resiliency, the depth of my fitness, the basic strength, yeah, is better than it's ever been.
nice.
Yeah. Okay, here, let's see. There's a couple more. What does a day in the life of Amber Neben look like? Ooh, a day in the life is pretty boring. So a training day in the life, let's say like today, and we'll leave out this unusual format of doing a master class with Lawrence Ben Lingen, right? So today I have a hard workout. I have a really hard workout that I'm gonna jump into, hence the I'm ready to go. Um, I sleep. I sleep till I wake up. I don't set an alarm if I don't have to. And my body's pretty regular at waking up about the same time, but without having to set an alarm, it really helps my nervous system, and it helps my recovery from the day before. So I'm not starting my day with a jolt. Um, I'll come downstairs, have a cup of coffee with my husband, pull out a devotion in my Bible, and spend some time in the Word and prayer, and just kind of get my heart set and right, and my focus, get tapped into my power source. So like I mentioned before, my power source. So it's like, okay, get tapped into my power source. Plug my phone in is essentially plugging my body in to the Word. From that point, I get my gear on. I get my well, let me pause there. I might jump on the computer and check emails. So I coach too. So I like to go through my athletes' training peaks and just make sure there were no late questions. If somebody sent me a question after I went to bed, I need to answer it. So check that. Might check headlines just to see what's going on in the world briefly. Okay, put my gear on, go through my mobility. So I've got a mobility routine that I go through, and then it's get out for my training ride. When I get back from my training ride, it's recovery. It's a recovery drink and a good meal, and really trying to get myself calm, get my brain shut off. Obviously, I have to post my file and write a note about it, so Tim has my information from the day. And then from that point forward, it sort of depends on what sorts of coaching things I have on the list to do. Have I volunteered to do some one-on-one bike skills training with somebody, or is somebody paying me to do that? Do I have more questions to answer? Am I leading any sort of group online that I have to prepare for? So it's really becomes a time for me to work from after I get back from my ride and do my recovery to dinner time. And then dinner is time with my husband. And then depending on what he's doing, what I have left to do, I might actually have some other things that I'll finish up on, whether I'm writing or, just zoning out into the world. So it's kind of like that. I'm very focused on training. I have some other groups that I'm involved with, leading and being a part of. Yeah, and then the coaching element is takes a big chunk of my time actually. Yeah.
A pretty productive and busy day. And you work with people that are less fortunate than you as well.
Yeah. So this year it's been kind of on the down low, but I do have a nonprofit and we help kids who are physically challenged. We put them on bikes and kids who are in underserved areas. Years ago, did a lot of stuff in homeless shelters and boys and girls clubs, helping put kids on bikes. Ultimately, with the goal of having the conversation with them that I wanted them to dare to be who it was they dreamed to be, and to understand that perseverance was going to be a very important part of the equation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep moving here. Let's see. If victory, but not the process, wouldn't do it. Love it. Okay. I'm a parent of a 9 and 11-year-old. 11-year-old loves try advice on cultivating grit for sports and more importantly, academics and life. Yeah, cultivating grit. Certainly, you just have to encourage your little ones to help them understand that life is not like a video game or an Amazon Prime order. I think we get so reeled into like it's a click of the button and you have an answer, but rarely is success easy. In fact, I don't think success is ever easy. It's going to be a pattern of trying and trying again and again and again. And the idea of not giving up. It's really just encouraging, and reminding them and maybe showing them people and telling them stories about people so they have models and examples of what it has taken to be successful and how much work has gone into the process. Yeah, it's making them feel okay with failure. So this idea of failure, I think so many times people think that means I'm a failure. If I fail, I'm not a failure. I just failed at doing something. And honestly, those are my best lessons. That's how I learn how not to do something. And I can't be afraid to try something and not do it well or not do it right, because that's how I learn, that's how I grow. And so really fostering that environment to try, and not to be afraid to try and to look for opportunities to learn, and just again reminding them it's hard. Like life is hard. That's normal. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
normal. Yeah.
Life's not fair, life's not easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't have a good journey though. Thanks, Amber.
Okay. Oh, here's a mobility or a functionality question. Getting power from the posterior chain. Can you explain that a bit? How do you quiet the quads to get the power from the glutes? I like that question. Yeah, so
Relax into it.
relax into it. That's what I cue my athletes to relax into the power. Yeah, so it's a timing thing, right? It's an activation thing and it's a timing thing. And so you have to get the order of operations right. So all you mathematics people will love that. To solve the problem, you have to do things in the right order. And so if you're not firing your glutes first, you're not going to fire them. So you have to get them activated and on first, and then let the quads come in when they want to come in. How do you get that happening? I mean, that's a Lawrence help question in the sense of if you're not functional, like if your biomechanics aren't right or your hips aren't right, so you have to get that going, and then you actually have to drill in the firing pattern. So you have to send a signal from your brain to your butt, and you have to cue that pattern and get it to flick on, turn the switch on, turn the switch on, turn the switch on, and turn the switch on first. And then on the bike, you can think through actually trying to drive through or drive from your posterior chain, try to drive through your core and your butt first. And that might be a position issue on the bike too. Some bike fitters will fit people to sit with an anterior rotated pelvis. And I personally think that makes it harder to activate my glutes, versus being in a more neutral position. So it might be how you're sitting on the bike that needs to be looked at. But certainly, yeah, there's a mental cueing that has to happen when you're relearning how to do that, in addition to your hips being in the right space.
And I can share a story I think with you is you once rode with your speed plays and the connector that sort of clips you in was broken. So basically, you weren't clipped in on that pedal, and you went for what, like a 3.5 hour ride, and didn't know that you weren't clipped in.
Yeah, you probably remember better than me, but that's actually a really good way is put on some platform pedals, and so then you cannot pull up, and you have to figure out the timing of power down right leg, power down left leg, power down right leg, power down left leg, and it's so repetitive. But just beginning to think through, like your body's going to follow your thinking. So start
Yeah.
with your thinking, start with your cueing, create the right activation, in your mobility before you even leave for your ride. Get your glutes on, get your hips flat, get that all dialed in.
Set yourself up for success.
Okay,
Cool. Okay.
what's
Yeah,
left?
last question.
What advice would I give to a junior racer? Fun, have fun. Um, you know, the sport is hard, and so you want to make sure you keep it fun. Ride a lot. I think when you're a junior, you start with riding a lot and being active and being consistent before you get too detailed and structured with your training plans. Certainly don't be afraid to do other sports too. I think we live in an age where everybody gets so specialized so early. So don't be afraid to try other sports because they'll help you be a better bike racer too. But once you get serious about junior racing, then yes, I think finding a good coach is probably a good idea so they can help you start to learn the process of training. There's so much to being an athlete, so much more than just like executing a training plan. You have to learn how to be an athlete. And so finding a good coach who can help you do that and take you through that process, along with helping you get the training right and the progression and building the energy systems and the physiology you need to be a great racer, and help you keep it fun and to remind you to keep things fun and to remind you that stuff is hard and it's okay when you can't finish a workout or stuff goes wrong. So I think that's probably what I got for that question.
Yeah, and surround yourself with the right people, role
Yeah.
models, and
Hmm.
who they were, But
Yeah,
it's
that's.
hard.
Hmm.
Like it's not an easy journey, that is for sure. I mean, we know that, like there's athletes in the high performance centers and the youth, and it's there's a lot of strong and influential people. There's a lot of it's a tough life. It's the road less traveled to excellence.
Yeah, it is. But when you do it the right way, it's lasting, and you can sleep at night. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Okay, Amber, that was amazing. So that's that was amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I know you got a big ride, so we're gonna log off now. We're gonna go across to the Patreon login, and then I don't know. We've covered so much now. We'll see if there's questions and stuff, and maybe we can kind of demonstrate, like you can do aeroplanes and show us how you do aeroplanes. We can
Ooh,
talk a little bit about
okay.
the glute acclimation and demonstrate it. But
Hmm.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amber,
Yeah,
for coming on the
yeah,
first inaugural masterclass.
yeah. You guys can find me on Amber Neben PX4 on Instagram. If you have other questions, shout them out to me there.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, I think Tanya will maybe put the links in there, and
Hmm.
your Dare to Be project, your website where you're coaching. You can see
Yeah,
more what's going on in Amber. But thank you. And Amber does coach. She does an
yeah.
amazing job of coaching. So if
Yeah,
you are looking for a
I
cycling
coach
coach,
junior athlete all the way up to a 72-ish year old guy. So,
full range.
yeah, it's full.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. And Amber, we wish you the very, very best in this unstable time. But you're kind of like a inspiration to me just to wake up every day and do what you can and not think
Yeah, do
too
what
far
you
into the
can.
future. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. And for me, I'm anchored. I know God's got a plan, and he knows. I don't know, but he knows. So it's like motor pacing. I follow my driver.
And thank you so much. And we'll definitely get you back on here at some stage again soon.
All right. It's been fun.
Okay,
Thanks, you
take care,
guys.
everyone.
Yeah.